Welcome back. One of the things that you probably found challenging in CSIT 103 or 105 may have been the concept of iteration or loops. And in particular, you probably dealt with something called a for loop. The for loop structure in Java is one that we took directly from C. But there's also another variation of the for loop called a for each loop that Java has inherited or stolen from other languages. It wasn't in the early versions of Java. Confusingly, the for each loop doesn't actually use the word each in it at all. So we're going to learn a form of a for loop which is used for processing collections. So in this section of the lecture, we're going to look at collections, how to do the same statement over and over and over again, which we call iteration, and in particular, the for each loop, which is fantastic for processing collections. The concept of iteration is one where we want to perform the same action some number of times. So print all the names in the organizer. Well, we don't know ahead of time how many names there are, but we need to do it for everyone. There are there are usually several different variations of a loop statement in programming languages. Java has several different types of loops, which we will get to in later chapters. But for right now, we're going to focus on the for each loop because it is uniquely suited for processing an entire collection. It's a very nice construct, and I'm glad that Java has adopted it. The nice thing with iterations is that we don't have to write the same code repetitively. We just have to tell the code to repeat itself a certain number of times. The challenge with iterations is in other forms of loops, it's possible that we can enter that loop and never create the condition that will cause us to leave the loop. You may have run into this problem of infinite loops. The benefit of a for each loop is that it will do the iterated code once for every object in the collection. The syntax is a little wonky, but once you understand how to read it, it will become a powerful part of your toolbox. This slide takes a little bit of getting used to. Notice in the top box, this is the structure of a for each loop. And the word each doesn't appear in there at all, except in the descriptor. The format is for, open parenthesis, for some variable of this data type, colon, coming from this collection of this data type, do some things. It's hard to work with it abstract, so let's turn this into English first, and then we'll look at it applied to the music organizer. Using each element in this collection, do this, is what you should be thinking of when you see this construct. For each element in this collection, do this. So how does this work? Let's say we have a method in a later version of our music organizer, which will list all of the files. So remember, in our previous iteration, we just had to say, give me the one at position 0, give me the one at position 3. Now we just want to say, print them all out. We could use a while loop. We could use a for loop. We could even use a do while loop, although if the organizer was empty, that might create an error for us. Or we'd have to write some specialized code. But with a for each loop, it's very simple. When we invoke list all files, For every file name in files, print the file name. So the way we say that, files is a collection of string. When we grab a file name from the files collection, we need to store it in a string variable. So let's call it file name. This part is up to us, but a good naming, a good name choice makes obvious what we're doing. So, for every file name of type string in files, come into the loop and print that file name. Shall we see it in action? Let's give it a try. So I'm here inside of BlueJ and I'm looking at Music Organizer version 3 right now. I'm just going to create my new music organizer. I'm going to add file, and because I had to compile and reopen with a new project, all of my previous file names are gone. So I will call it music file 1, and let's add another file. Call it music file 2, and music file 3, and we'll just go up to 4. And I should be able to say list all files, and it will give me this output. Now, let's go into the source code with a breakpoint and see what's actually happening. Here inside of Music Organizer, here is our list all files. I'm going to set my breakpoint here, and let's see what happens with our debugger. List all files. Okay, here's the Music Organizer. Here's my debugger. I have my array list of string where my files are, and this music player which we're not going to use here. For every file name in files of type string, so let's step. I'm here, my local variable. This is actually defining a local variable, and it'll be changing each time through the loop. File name has been created and assigned, and we didn't have to do anything other than it's the for each loop's job to grab an item from the collection and put it in there. So music file 1, let's step, and we print things out. Here it is in the terminal. And we are at the end of the loop, and we step and we come back up and say, are there more items in the collection? Notice file name has disappeared. There are more items in the collection, so it goes back in, and now file name is music file 2, and we step and it prints itself, and it's there inside of the output. We're at the end of the loop, it comes back up. File name has disappeared, it's going to create a new file name. Well, it's going to ask the collection, do you have more items? We do. So we grab that item, create a new file name variable, call it music file 3. We will print that out, and that shows up. We're at the end of the loop, we come back up to the top. We ask the collection, are there more items? There are. It creates the variable. Now we have music file 4. We print that out. What happens now? Do we just end? We have all of the items. We're not quite done yet. Even though we know all the items have been printed, the computer doesn't. So it has to come back up and ask files, do you have any more items? And it doesn't. So now it jumps past the loop to the next line. In this case, the next line is the end of the method. We're done listing all files, and it's completed its task. Hopefully that helps you understand how the for each loop is going to work. In general, when we talk about loops or we talk about iteration, we're talking about repeating the same statements over and over. A for each loop is going to look at each item in the collection once, and then we can do the sequence of steps that we need to for that item, for every item that exists in the collection. But it will grab every item from the collection once and exactly once, and that's good. That means that we're ensured that we're not going to get unnecessary or unintentional repetition, and also that the loop will end because every collection has to be finite because no computer has infinite memory. Okay, when we come back, we'll add some additional statements into our for each loop so that it's not just printing everything, but actually combining some additional questions into what we want to do.